I want to look at our demons, the things that trouble us, in terms of how we frame it. Where do they come from? Because we have a very definite psychological model in the West that traces much of this back to childhood. And that doesn't seem to me to be the indigenous view. And I trust the indigenous view. I trust the indigenous view about lots of things because it's worldwide. Yeah. You find the same, even though their traditions, of course, are very different, different languages, different everything. Fundamentally, there's the same kind of outlook on what it is to be human in this world. And it is sophisticated too. It's not just primitive and we've gone beyond that and we've made these discoveries. No, it's not like that. And that's why I have faith in it. Ron, the Chippewa Cree guy who used to come and stay with me, we'd talk philosophy over the breakfast table. We'd talk metaphysics. We'd talk subtle definitions of words, all that sort of stuff. That's how I learn, is around the breakfast table. And his philosophy, his way of seeing the world, which is traditional to his people, it's incredibly subtle, probably more subtle than anything we have. Yeah. And it incorporates spirit. It's not a philosophy of a dead universe. It's not cynical at all. It's very realistic. So I look to these worldwide wisdoms, if you like, indigenous wisdoms. And how do they view the demons? Well, I don't know worldwide, but I do know there's one guy called Eduardo Duran. He's written a book called Healing the Soul Wound. And he's part Native American and he's a Jungian analyst and he does a lot of work with the guys on the reservation. And often the problem with them is alcoholism. So first thing he does when they come to see him is he waves a bit of smudge and does a bit of ceremony. And that engages the unconscious. Yeah, it engages ancient traditions that they've forgotten, but it's still somewhere in them. Something in them wakes up. And then he goes, okay, this alcoholism, it's a spirit that's come to visit you. Get to know it. What's it look like? What's its name? Yeah, introduce yourself to it like you would to any guest. You need to come into relationship with it. So that's the first session he'll do with them. And he says immediately their relationship with the bottle changes. So the indigenous view much more seems to be, and I get this from Lewis Madrona as well, another native guy. He says that these demons are not essentially part of us. They belong to the universe and they're coming to visit us. That is the native indigenous story, if you like. It's a story. Anything's a story. It's not the absolute truth. Nothing's the absolute truth. But I think it's a great story. I really like it. And that's how I try and deal with this stuff. So the anxiety I talked about in the last episode that I sometimes suffer from, it's come to visit me and it's trying to get its claws into me and I'm going, no. Yeah. I'm treating it like I would a pet that wants to misbehave. Yeah. It's like, no, you're not doing that. Yeah. But I'm still going to be around you and we'll share a cup of tea together. Yeah. Because if you just push them out, it'll just get worse. So it's this dance that we need to do. So it's a very different way of viewing the demons. And where do they come from? We don't know. I mean, William Wordsworth, the poet, you know, our birth is but a sleep and a forgetting. We trailing clouds of glory do we come from God who is our home. Yeah, it's like we come in with stuff. We come in trailing clouds of glory and maybe a string of demons as well. Who knows? Maybe you did some sort of deal with the universe before you were born. Okay, I'll have this demon and that demon this time because I'll learn this, that, and the other. You know, I mean, again, it's a story, but maybe it's a helpful story. And so I'm partly coming at this because I also want to address what James Hillman calls the parental fallacy. James Hillman's a sort of archetypal psychologist. He's died now. He actually had analysis with Jung as a young man. Stopped after a while. He said, I'd have been burnt up by Jung's light. It was too strong for me. Well, I don't know if that's entirely true. Anyway, he was a highly original thinker, and he would challenge the common assumptions. And it's fundamental to psychotherapy and to our psychological understanding that we are who we are because of our childhood to a considerable degree. Now, there's the whole nature-nurture argument. There's a couple of books around this. First of all, a book called Blueprint by Robert Plomin, based on DNA research amongst identical twins brought up separately, all sorts of categories. And the finding is that nature is a lot more part of the picture and nurture a lot less part of the picture than we're led to think. Of course, nurture still plays an important part, but less so. A lot more things are inherited. A lot more things are innate in us. And there's another book called The Nurture Assumption by Judith Rich Harris. And she does meta-research amongst all these sort of twin studies and reaches the same sort of conclusions, that nurture is a lot less responsible for who we are than we think. That's point one. Point two, it's easy to create stories and spend a lot of time with your psychotherapist exploring those stories about why what happened in your childhood explains how you are now. I could take my anxiety. I could describe it at length with a psychotherapist in terms of my father and my relationship with him, or my mother and my relationship with her, or the boarding school I went to. I could use all those avenues, yeah, and come up with very convincing stories. Now, that doesn't mean it doesn't work, because just the very fact that we're paying attention to these things in a way brings them to consciousness, brings them into closer relationship with us. And that's the main thing, is coming into close relationship with our demons. It's not about transforming them. This is another key point. Who knows what part they play? Like Gollum in Lord of the Rings, where they wanted to get rid of him. And Gandalf goes, we don't know what part he's got to play. And of course, the ring would never have got thrown into Mount Doom without Gollum. So these, what we call demons, they often serve a purpose. So our job isn't to transform them, it's to come into relationship with them. And as I say, childhood explanations, they're just one more story. There is no proof, as far as I can see, no proper research that shows these actually are causative. But it is so deeply embedded, this idea that our demons are a result of our childhood and what our parents did wrong. It's such a deep idea that we take it as absolute reality, and it can take quite a lot to shift that one. But it needs shifting. We need to loosen up this whole picture. It is not traditional. It's not indigenous. And that's where we're coming from with shamanism and with chaos shamanism. Yeah, we're trying to go back to the heart of indigeneity. Yeah, and what is universal. And they did not have this. Of course, certain things about our childhood explain certain things about us, but it's on the surface. Essentially, who we are and the type of person we become as an adult it's inherent. It's in our nature. And also, the demons we have to struggle with, and maybe, some of the stuff that maybe did land on us from our childhood, it gives us something to struggle with. Yeah? It gives us something to claim who we are. That's been my experience. So that's why we need quite a broad view on these things. We need a long-term view, because it's not just like something's gone wrong, you go to therapy, you sort it and become a normal human being. It's not like that at all. Yeah, they are a mystery. Yeah, but we do need to be honest about them. Be honest with yourself, and come into good relationship with them. And it takes many years, and it's ongoing, and it's the grit in the oyster which keeps us growing.